or remove that shed immediately, or you'll be hearing from our lawyers." Her voice cracked through the morning air like a whip across glass. It wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't even a stranger. It was Karen, the infamous president of our homeowners association, clipboard in hand, mouth loaded like a weapon. She was standing on our front lawn, screaming at my wife like she was addressing a criminal. But here's what Karen didn't know. My wife, the quiet, graceful woman she saw in a sweater and slippers, wasn't just another suburban homeowner. She was a federal agent. And Karen had just kicked the hornet's nest. Let me take you back to the beginning. It was a perfect Saturday morning. The kind that makes you cancel errands just to breathe in the calm. I was out back working on our old wooden shed, a modest little structure where we kept gardening tools, some moving boxes, and honestly, a few memories. Meanwhile, Anna, my wife, was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and her laptop open. To most people, she probably looked like she was checking emails. But I knew better. That look on her face, laser, focused, cold, calculating. She wasn't browsing. She was analyzing, watching, waiting. That shed. To anyone else, it's just storage. To Anna, it was the place where she once kept field equipment while working undercover. And also where she had stored our wedding photos during the move. It was where her two worlds met. Justice and love. She once told me during a quiet night when the world felt far away, "This shed reminds me who I am, who I fight for." Then came Karen. In a stiff navy blazer, hair helmet perfect, heels clacking on the driveway like a judge about to sentence someone. She didn't knock. She didn't smile. She pointed. "This structure violates community guidelines. Section 15(3) subsection B paragraph 4 unauthorized, non-compliant." She whipped out a measuring tape like it was a crime scene and started clicking photos from every angle, even crouching down for dramatic low-angle shots like she was documenting a felony. She read off the bylaws like scripture, flipping pages on her clipboard like she was holding court. That's when Anna stepped outside. She didn't say a word at first, just sipped her coffee, watching Karen like she was analyzing evidence at a crime scene. And I recognized it, that look, the same one I'd seen when she was preparing testimony before a federal judge. When she knew someone was lying but chose to wait, quietly, precisely, until they gave her what she needed. "If we needed more time to make adjustments, what's the procedure?" Anna asked casually. Karen's eyes lit up. She thought she had us. "Well, I could issue fines. Legal actions are on the table. Some people think they're above the rules, but I'm not afraid to remind them." Then, Anna smiled. Just slightly. And that, right there, should have been Karen's warning sign. "You might want to double-check the property boundaries in the HOA documentation," she said sweetly. Karen's confidence wavered. For the first time, I rushed inside and found our original property survey. When I brought it back out, my hands were shaking. "Actually," I told Karen, "this shed falls under grandfathered status, before the HOA even existed." The blood drained from her face like someone had flipped a switch. "That's not possible," she stammered. "I've run this neighborhood for 5 years." But Anna didn't flinch. "Sometimes the oldest structures hold the most interesting stories," she said softly. And somehow, I knew she wasn't just talking about the shed anymore. Karen stood frozen, rechecking her clipboard, visibly rattled. But even then, she didn't back down. She straightened her blazer, puffed her chest, and declared, "Grandfathered or not, you've got 48 hours to address the aesthetic violations, or I'll be involving my legal team." She marched back to her SUV, snapping more photos as she went. That was the moment I should have realized Anna wasn't just defending a shed. She was preparing to bring down a tyrant, and when I saw Anna lift her phone to photograph Karen's license plate, I finally asked, "What are you doing?" She didn't even look up. She just smiled and repeated, "Sometimes the oldest structures hold the most interesting stories." And then she added something that sent a chill down my spine. But maybe this was never about the shed at all. After Karen stormed off in a cloud of righteous fury, I thought it was over. The shed, our humble, weathered little structure, had been legally grandfathered in. The HOA couldn't touch it. Case closed, right? Not to Anna. To Anna, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much, much bigger. That evening, we sat on our back porch as the golden sun dipped behind the rooftops. Anna was quiet, holding her tea, staring at the shed like it held secrets no one else could see. Her silence wasn't brooding. It was strategic. "I used to be scared," she said softly, almost like she was talking to herself. 2 years ago, during an investigation, someone threatened me. I jumped at every knock on the door for weeks. I reached over, took her hand. "But when you're here," she whispered, "I feel like I can face anything." That was the moment I realized something important. This wasn't about the shed anymore. Karen hadn't just picked a fight with a structure. She'd poked the heart of a woman who had spent her life protecting others in the shadows. What worried me most wasn't Karen. It was how calmly Anna was handling everything. Over the next 2 days, she spent long hours behind closed doors in her home office, making phone calls, typing furiously, then slipping out of the house for hours without much explanation beyond just work. Meanwhile, I braced myself for the next blow. It came. Stuffed, no, taped, to our mailbox like some kind of legal eviction notice was an official HOA violation letter. Karen's name in bold at the bottom. The structure is non-compliant with community aesthetics. Must be removed within 7 days or face escalating fines, legal penalties, and forced action. The word forced was underlined, like a threat you weren't supposed to miss. I panicked. I started grabbing paint samples, pricing out new doors, brainstorming how to make the shed acceptable in the eyes of Karen's clipboard. But Anna stopped me. "Don't change a thing," she said with a calm finality. "Trust me, David, this is bigger than a tin roof and peeling paint." The way she said it, not a plea but a command, made me pause mid-step. She wasn't asking. She was already in motion, playing a game Karen didn't even know she was part of. Meanwhile, Karen was working the neighborhood like she was running a campaign for Tyrant of the Year. I watched from the window as she knocked on doors, clipboard in hand, no doubt building her army of signatures against us. A few neighbors stopped waving. 1 or 2 avoided eye contact altogether. And then, Sandra, our neighbor 2 doors down, approached me one evening by the mailbox. "I'm sorry," she murmured. Karen came by. "She said you two were breaking the rules, threatening property values that you were." She trailed off, too embarrassed to finish. I nodded. I couldn't blame her. Karen had built a reign of fear and formality, a dictatorship dressed in HOA policies. That night on the porch, Anna asked me something that made my stomach twist. "If something happens, do you trust me?" I didn't hesitate. "Always," she smiled. "Just barely. Then let me handle this. Don't interfere. I need to do this my way." She didn't need to say it out loud, but I knew. Karen had unknowingly stepped into the middle of a federal investigation. And now it was personal. The next morning, the situation escalated in a way that would have been funny if it weren't so absurd. Karen called the police. Not an exaggeration. She literally dialed 911 over a shed. I was halfway through my breakfast when I heard voices out front. 2 officers, one older, weathered, tired of neighborhood drama. The other, younger, clearly confused about why they were even there. "We received a report," the older one said, glancing at a paper. "Something about obstruction of HOA enforcement." Anna calmly stepped out, presented the property documents, and with quiet confidence explained the shed's grandfathered status. Then, I saw it. She handed one of the officers a business card. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable. But the older cop looked down, raised an eyebrow, and nodded. 10 minutes later, they were gone. No report, no action, no more questions. And that's when I began to worry, not about Karen, but about my wife. Because I was beginning to understand something. Karen was a barking dog. But Anna was a panther watching from the shadows. She didn't react. She calculated. And when she moved, it meant someone was about to be cornered. I thought things would cool down after the police visit. I really did. But Karen, she wasn't done. She was just warming up. That afternoon, she showed up at our door again. This time, she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a middle-aged man in a wrinkled gray suit, carrying a worn-out briefcase and projecting the confidence of someone who'd never actually won a case. "This is my legal advisor," Karen announced like she was introducing the district attorney. "We're here to deliver a formal notice. If that unauthorized structure isn't removed within 48 hours, we'll be pursuing legal action." I tried not to laugh. The man looked as confused as I felt. His legal explanation sounded like it came from a badly written HOA handbook. Later, Anna confirmed he wasn't a lawyer at all. Just Karen's cousin, a paralegal at a small town law firm. Still, Karen acted like she was leading a congressional hearing. I nearly closed the door on them. But Anna, she stood perfectly still, sipping tea, watching the man speak as if she were cataloging his every word for evidence. As they turned to leave, Karen threw one last threat over her shoulder. "You'll see. I am the law in this neighborhood." Anna didn't say a word. But I knew that look in her eyes. It meant someone had just stepped in too far. Inside, I asked her, "Should we just tell them who you really are? Maybe she'd back off if she knew. Anna shook her head slowly. If I reveal my identity now, we lose the bigger picture. Karen might be more than a nuisance. She could be a threat in a wider network. A network of what? I asked. Fraud, she replied without hesitation. Then she opened her laptop. The screen lit up with a spreadsheet so detailed it made my head spin. Dates, contractor names, check numbers, signatures. A trail, a paper trail. This one, she said, pointing to a line community gate renovation, 47,000. Have you seen a single improvement on that gate since we moved in? I shook my head. It looked exactly the same as it always had. Anna whispered. The invoices are fake. The funds are inflated. And guess whose signature is on every single approval? She scrolled down. Another entry, landscape beautification 30,000, that was done by Karen's nephew. 2 days of work, maybe 500 worth of plants. Just then, Mr. Williams, our elderly neighbor, knocked on the back door. He came in holding a cup of coffee and a look of quiet frustration. That garden Karen keeps bragging about, the one her nephew did? I watched that kid take more selfies than he planted shrubs. Anna took notes calmly, her face unreadable. Classic misuse of power, she muttered. They always leave a trail when they think no one's watching. And that's when it all clicked for me. The shed, our shed, wasn't just a petty dispute anymore. It had become the centerpiece of a federal investigation. And Anna, she wasn't just defending it. She was leveraging it to bring down an entire system. But what happened next took it to another level. That morning, I watched Karen pacing across the street, talking loudly on the phone. Her voice was full of desperation. You promised you'd protect me. They're going after me. You said you had connections! I couldn't hear the other end of the call, but I didn't need to, because the moment Karen hung up, she looked around like a trapped animal. And for the first time, she looked afraid. I turned to Anna. What did you do? She smiled, just enough to show a sliver of teeth. All I did was make it known to her connections that she's now a liability. No one protects a sinking ship, David. That night, as we cleared the dinner table, I stared at my wife, same woman, same quiet strength. But now I saw it fully. She was the kind of woman who made powerful people nervous. Karen had crossed a line and Anna, she had just pulled the pin. The court date arrived faster than I expected. And though no one said it out loud, the entire neighborhood was watching us. Some hoped we'd be put in our place. Others were quietly rooting for something, or someone, to finally stand up to Karen. What they didn't know was that Anna had been preparing for this moment from the very beginning. The courtroom was small and cold, lit by flickering fluorescents and lined with wooden benches hard enough to make anyone regret sitting down. But the tension in the air could have bent steel. Karen entered like she was about to defend a billion-dollar case. Perfectly pressed black suit, hair lacquered into helmet form, and in her hands, a binder so thick it looked like she was carrying the Constitution itself. Anna, by contrast, wore a simple navy dress. No frills, no drama. But her posture said everything she didn't come to plead. She came to finish this. Karen launched into a 10-minute speech that sounded like it had been rehearsed in front of a mirror for weeks. I have worked tirelessly for this community for over 5 years, she declared. If we don't uphold standards, we allow chaos. That shed represents defiance. If we let this go, what's next? Junkyard, chicken coops. We must protect our property values. I'll admit it. If I didn't know the truth, I might have been convinced. She presented photos, measurements, bylaws, even a massive poster of our shed like it was Exhibit A in a murder trial. Karen's so-called legal advisor, her cousin in a wrinkled suit, nodded along as if she were changing the course of HOA history. Judge Patricia Lee, a composed woman in her 60s, listened patiently. She glanced at us occasionally, face unreadable. When Karen finally finished, the judge murmured, "Your documentation appears thorough." My stomach dropped. But Anna didn't flinch. She stood up slowly and said, "Your Honor, may I examine the letter submitted by Ms. Foster, the one on city letterhead?" Judge Lee handed it over. Anna read it. Then she looked up, calm as ever. This letter was sent from a personal email address, not a city account, she stated. And the person who supposedly signed it retired from city council last month. Silence. Pure, frozen silence. Karen's eyes widened. "That's not possible. I have connections." Anna didn't respond with emotion. Just logic. Those connections appear unofficial. Then she placed a small, organized folder on the judge's desk. Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence of financial discrepancies under Ms. Foster's tenure as HOA president. We've identified $165,000 in irregular spending, playground upgrades, landscaping contracts, security systems, all grossly inflated or non-existent, all authorized by one signature. Gasps filled the room. Even Judge Lee's poker face cracked as she flipped through the documents. Ms. Foster, are these your signatures on the authorizations? Karen stumbled. I can't recall. Anna stepped forward slightly, her voice calm and deliberate. Then allow me to properly introduce myself. My name is Anna Mitchell, Special Agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This shed dispute led to the exposure of a broader investigation into HOA financial fraud across this region. And Ms. Foster just helped us connect the dots. Dead silence. Then, the courtroom doors opened. 2 FBI agents entered, flanked by Officer Rodriguez from the local police department. One stepped forward and said, Karen Foster, you are under arrest for embezzlement of HOA funds, submission of falsified documents, and misuse of community resources under federal jurisdiction. Karen exploded. I built this neighborhood. I am this neighborhood. Anna looked at her, eyes cool, voice sharp. You built something, all right. But it wasn't what this community paid for. Judge Lee cleared her throat, now visibly relieved. All charges against the defendants dismissed. Case closed. As Karen was cuffed and led out, the shock on her face was almost comical. From clipboard queen to federal detainee, all in one afternoon. And as she turned back for one final plea, Anna delivered the perfect closing line. About the shed. We're keeping it. Consider it a monument to choosing your battles wisely. I watched her walk back to me. Calm, graceful, unshaken. And I realized my wife just took down a neighborhood tyrant in her spare time. Less than 24 hours after the courtroom bombshell, Karen's mugshot was plastered across every local news channel. Gone was the immaculate HOA president in her signature blazer and heels. Now she was just another disgraced official, disheveled, wide-eyed, and wearing the unmistakable look of someone who never thought they'd be caught. The headlines were brutal. HOA president arrested in federal fraud case, $165,000 in community funds missing. The neighborhood reaction was swift and dramatic. People who once whispered their grievances now lined up to speak out. Our front door turned into a sort of confession booth. Neighbors came not to gossip but to unburden themselves. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly widow from 3 doors down, arrived with tears in her eyes. She fined me $300, she whispered, because my rocking chair was misaligned on the porch. I couldn't afford groceries that month. I was too afraid to argue. Anna listened. No interruptions, no judgment, just quiet, unwavering presence. You don't have to be afraid anymore, she said softly. Then came the young couple from House 12, the same ones who had once looked away when we passed. They brought cookies as a peace offering. We signed the petition Karen passed around. The husband admitted. She said you too were causing trouble. We feel awful now. Karen's downfall wasn't just poetic, it was inevitable. This time, she hired a real attorney. But not even the most aggressive legal team could disprove what Anna had meticulously built over weeks. Fake invoices, shell companies, wire transfers to relatives, signed approvals on every document, all pointing back to Karen. She was formally charged and sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, $200,000 in restitution, and a lifetime ban from holding any HOA or civic leadership role. Even the judge had something to say. This is a light sentence, Foster, only because you cooperated with the broader investigation. With Karen gone, the HOA board scrambled, most of them resigned. An emergency town hall was called. The entire neighborhood packed into the local elementary school gym, not to argue but to rebuild. This time, they didn't want rulers. They wanted transparency, accountability, and healing. Anna and I sat in the back row. No spotlight, no speeches. We don't need to lead, she whispered. We just needed to help them see what was broken. To everyone's surprise, Sandra, the neighbor who once sided with Karen, was nominated to join the new board. Her first act, turning the overpriced landscape project into a community garden. I don't know legal codes, she said at the ribbon cutting, but I know neighborhoods aren't built on fear. That day, kids ran barefoot through the grass that Karen once policed like sacred ground. Old folks sat on benches where threats used to be delivered. And in the center of it all stood our little shed. Once called an eyesore, now the heart of the neighborhood. That evening, I asked Anna, do you ever feel bad for her? She didn't answer right away. She stared at the stars, fingers wrapped around her tea. Justice isn't about vengeance, David. It's about consequences matching actions. Karen wasn't punished for a shed. She was punished for turning fear into profit. I looked at the shed, still standing, but now surrounded by flowers, benches, laughter. A monument to what happens when good people finally say enough. Life slowly returned to normal, at least. For those who never served time, Karen was released from federal prison after 18 months. Rumor had it she moved to another state, changed her name, and was trying to disappear. No one here missed her. But one quiet Saturday afternoon, as I was mowing the lawn, a familiar white SUV rolled slowly past our house. It stopped, just for a few seconds, in front of our driveway. Behind the wheel was Karen. She didn't get out, didn't say a word. She just sat there, staring at the shed. The same shed she once tried to destroy, now lovingly surrounded by garden beds, laughter, and neighbors working side by side. She didn't honk, didn't wave, just watched, then drove away. No drama, just silence. That night, Anna and I sat on our back porch under the warm glow of garden lights. The kids were playing in the community space where HOA threats used to echo. Now it was filled with joy. I turned to her and asked, "Do you ever feel sorry for her?" Anna didn't answer right away. She took her time, like she always did, weighing the question carefully. Then she looked at me and said, "No, David, I don't. Because it was never really about the shed. It was about arrogance. About thinking you can't be held accountable, and believing silence equals weakness." She stared out at the shed, still standing, stronger than ever. "Justice doesn't require a loud fight," she said. "It just requires someone brave enough to start it." A few months later, new neighbors moved into the house across the street. The husband came over to introduce himself, all smiles and friendliness. He glanced at the shed behind me and chuckled. "Nest shed. Any HOA rules I should know about?" Before I could speak, Anna stepped forward with a knowing grin. "Just one," she said. "Don't try to bully your neighbors. You never know who you're messing with." And with that, the story came full circle. We hadn't just defended a shed. We'd restored a neighborhood, one where fear had no place and integrity meant everything. So if you've ever been bullied by someone hiding behind a title, remember this: not everyone who stays silent is weak. And not everyone who pours tea can't build a federal case. If you've ever been pushed aside, underestimated, or silenced by someone who thought they had more power than you, remember this: justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it speaks through quiet courage. Where are you watching from? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if you believe this story deserves to be heard, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who's been through something similar. Because here on Taich's channel, we tell the kinds of stories where justice finds its way back home.